Welcome to the Digital Accomplice Podcast. Today I'm joined by Jason Tsai, who is a technology marketer with many, many years of experience. I don't want to say how many, but a lot. So, welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you so much for having me, Dane.
So, I like to start out with a nice, easy question. What would be a recent content marketing success that you'd say you enjoy?
Well, I'm gonna unfortunately start this this podcast with a little bit of a humble brag, because it's different because, and I want to talk about this one because it was one where I was actually really surprised by the results, like pleasantly surprised by the results, more so than anything else that I've sort of put out there into the world in the last few years. Um, and that was a post that I did. This is for me as my sort of personal brand, right? Like I went to a conference, and this woman did a nice little presentation on personal brand. I started thinking to myself as a sort of marketer, okay, well, what is my personal brand? I wonder what my target audience thinks my personal brand is. So I actually did a post on LinkedIn that basically just asked people like, what is the Jason Tsai brand, right? Like, what are the three words that you think of when you see my name? Um, and this post just crushed everything else that I've really ever done in terms of LinkedIn comments and shares and all that good stuff. Um, and I think that thinking about it from a marketer perspective, what I think it was a good example of, sort of in retrospect, right? Of this, I'm not pretending that I was so smart that I kind of put these things together before I did it, but it was sort of involving the audience, right? It follows a lot of those kind of best practices of good content marketing, right? It's like involving the audience, and ultimately helping or enabling them to to spread the good word about me, right? As thinking about myself as the product, or the thing that we're trying to sell, and it was in their own words and all that good stuff, and it was super successful. Like I said, like probably a good 5x my next closest post in terms of performance.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. What a judo sort of Jedi move that you did there. So, um,
It was nerve wracking to put that out there, right? Because it takes a little, like, I'm not going to pretend that my finger wasn't stuck on that publish button
yeah.
for a couple of seconds there, but yeah, it turned out fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. So that's something like kind of a takeaway for all of us, probably. So, um,
Yeah, I would say, like, I wouldn't be afraid of it. I think people, generally in your network, like, hopefully you don't have people in your network that are going to just troll you if you put something out like that.
yeah,
But yeah, it's a good way to get feedback and really understand, right? Like, luckily for me, the way that I envision myself from a personal, my what I perceive my own personal brand, is actually pretty similar to how I'm coming across to people, which is great.
yeah, that is great. So, what would you say then would be like your biggest marketing challenge right now, and what are we, thinking we're doing about that?
I would say that in marketing broadly, the biggest challenge at the moment, is two little letters, but two letters that pack a real punch. Those letters are A and I. Um, I do think, I've been fortunate to be able to spend a good amount of time really digging in and sort of figuring out what to make of it, what's useful, what isn't, testing the limits, all those kinds of things. But I talk that 90-95% of the marketers that I speak to, are in this kind of catch-22 where they know that AI can save them time, can make them more efficient, can do all these things, but they just can't find the time to figure out how to do it. And I think with the the way that AI is going to change the fundamentals of everything. Think back to when digital became a thing, or we called it online back then. um, that really changed the rules for how you play the marketing game. I think AI is doing the same thing, starting to do the same thing, but it's going to do it at a much more rapid pace. And I think that for the majority of marketers, the challenge right now is, okay, just figure out how to get more involved, right? Like using a little bit of ChatGPT, cool, nice, good thing to start with. But make sure that you find the time to keep going, because it's going to be something that is really going to change a lot of things in a lot of ways that I don't think people are thinking about even at the moment.
Right, right. And then maybe not quite as dramatic, but video is also kind of having a moment right now with the algorithms rewarding video, and the rise of TikTok and YouTube Shorts. What are you looking at doing right now with video, and what's working there for you and what's not?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I love about video is, so like as an example, right? We put on some events in Cannes last year, and we took a videographer and we captured the content, and we then can extend the audience beyond the people that could be at that event. And then you can cut it up into little pieces, right? And you can sort of share those as little bite-sized um, moments, nuggets of insight and things like that. So obviously that's not groundbreaking in any kind of way. But I think that to the extent that that becomes easier, right, and that becomes cheaper for people to create that kind of content, um, and just thinking from an AI perspective, right, as AI makes it so much easier to flood the marketplace with text content, right, and that's kind of potentially maybe dull, or maybe same, right. I think video has a really interesting place in terms of really communicating personality, and enabling humans to be human in a human way. Um, I think video is only going to continue to rise in importance.
Right. And we're going to circle back to AI because this is a set format of questions in this order. And so I do want to double click on what you said about AI earlier, and kind of turn it around on you. Like, what are you doing right now? Because I know you're someone who's spent some time with it, and I'm just kind of guessing you're a little more advanced than most people watching on what you can make work with it right now.
Yeah, I hope that's true. um, but that said, I think the thing that I would want to communicate to people who maybe are a little bit overwhelmed by all these things that AI maybe could do, or I'm not sure if it could do them. There are a lot of really simple use cases that are super powerful, right? And can return a lot of time back to you with very minimal time investment, right? So Notebook LM, I think, is a fantastic example of a tool that is just super easy to use. I was doing some research the other day. I found a bunch of PDFs on a topic. Actually, it was about AI adoption in marketing, right? So I found a bunch of studies that people had done, hundreds of pages worth of PDF, right? It would have taken me a good day, 2 days probably to actually read through all of them, and absorb the salient points or find the stuff that I was looking for. But what Notebook LM lets you do is you just upload all those PDFs into a notebook, um, gives you a summary. You can ask it questions. You can say, like, hey, I'm looking for data points on agency adoption of AI specifically. Anything in here? Yeah, of course. Here they are. Here's the citation. Here's the direct reference to exactly where in these PDFs that data point comes from. And that it takes literally like 5 minutes to learn how to use. Right. So there's all kinds of stuff like that. I think, Julius AI for data visualization and manipulation. There's all kinds of things that ChatGPT, Claude, and Perplexity can do that people don't know they can do. Right. They're really flexible tools. And I think, just getting past that kind of initial experimentation with it and starting to figure out like, oh, okay, this thing can actually help me build out an Excel template, right? Or it can help me do research for, like Perplexity is really, in most cases, replaced Google for me in terms of my go-to, where do I go to first to find information?
Right.
So I think there's a lot of things like that. Now, on the more kind of advanced end, yeah, you can get to like, okay, doing, personalization. You can do the image creation and video creation stuff. I don't find as easy to work with. Let's say.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure you've noticed that as well. But like video is a good example, right? Like with video, maybe the video creation is not there today, right? Like I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, with AI I can totally replace, how I used to create video. But there's a good example, Opus Clip is a great thing, right? Where you just upload a video and it's like, hey, I think these are the interesting points in this video. And I'm going to pre-make you little snippets here that you can use out in your social media or whatever else.
Right.
That's a real good time saver.
Right. Right. Yeah, those are some good examples. And I'm kind of curious how, when it comes to repurposing, like, are you finding AI helpful in repurposing content, and what other ways are you repurposing things successfully right now?
Yeah, I mean, AI is a great is it, I think as a general rule right now is really good at taking something. So if you have a piece of content, right, either and sort of transforming it, right. So in the Notebook LM example, we talk about, well, we have many pieces of content, we can shrink it down into one. And actually, we didn't even talk about the fact that Notebook LM can actually turn that into a 10-minute podcast, audio podcast, which is pretty mind blowing and crazy. But so that kind of um, transformation of an existing piece of content, or the tweaking of an existing piece of content, slicing it up, um, figuring out how to take the highlights and turn those into social posts, or at least drafts of social posts, right? I think AI is really good at all of that kind of stuff. But if you're going to tell it like, hey, create me a social post on this from scratch today, that you're going to need to really iterate on that or prompt it really specifically to get a good outcome.
Right.
Um, so, I think for most, again, with those, 90-95% of marketers that are really just they're not deep into it yet, like start with the easy stuff, because that's probably the stuff that you don't want to do anyway. It's the mundane stuff. It's the repetitive stuff. It's the stuff that like, uh, hours of this, like I would love for a robot to do it for me.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah. And so when it comes to content performance, what's your current thinking about what's working? What kind of metrics matter, and how do you look at the return of all this content we're all cranking out?
yeah, so what, I've spent the last few years in more of a kind of B2B kind of mindset, and in that sense, it was really all about like qualified leads, right? So, is the content kind of attracting people? Are they then turning into prospects, and people that we ultimately can sell to? Now, I do think there's some work to be done, and sort of continued thinking that is being done by a lot of people around the attribution of that, and how nothing really exists sort of in a vacuum, and in the way that this reporting often comes back and makes it look like, oh well, this thing it did really well and this thing doesn't matter. Well, the reality is that they could have, they work in conjunction, and they're not measured, like their percentage of impact on the output is not directly measurable yet, maybe ever. So I'm actually seeing a handful of smart marketers that I sort of follow or listen to on podcasts and stuff, starting to say, like, actually, all those like ROAS metrics and those things that you've been using in paid media, like, throw them out, check them out. They're not useful. They're telling you the wrong thing. Um, and I think that's an interesting point of view, and one that I'm sort of following pretty closely, because there are a lot of shortcomings, let's say, in terms of how marketing gets measured today. And yes, our desire is to make it more measurable. My desire is always to be able to go to the CFO and say, hey, if you put in this many dollars, you're going to get this many out. So, feed the marketing machine. But I think that the methods by which we do that are going to have to evolve, or in some cases sort of devolve, right? There's this notion of incrementality, right? And like almost like kind of going back to the things that the CPGs used to do, where they do mixed market testing, right? And they're like, okay, we take two markets and we do TV in one and not in the other, and we see what the lift is, and now we can know, right? Those kinds of experiments, I think, are becoming more common in the digital world versus just the, okay, I'm gonna, use cookies and all these things to figure out how to attribute the value and the ROI.
Right. So as we've sort of touched on all these main issues kind of in the marketing space right now, what would you say would be like your biggest advice to marketers facing this wild, wild west of AI and shifting sands?
Yeah, so I would say you really just gotta find a little bit of time, and a little bit really is all it takes. But don't let the overwhelmingness of AI kind of put you off. Find a couple of really simple use cases, right? And if you're struggling to think of like what those use cases are, please just ping me. I'll tell you what they are, for based on what you do, because there are a couple of things that are pretty magical, and will enable you to take a couple of hours back, right? And with a couple of hours, now you're playing with house money, right? Now you can say, okay, I'm gonna probably do the two other things on my to-do list that I didn't get to do, but B, hopefully I'm gonna take some of that time and reinvest it in getting to the next level, right? Into the next use case, the next use
Yeah.
case, the next use case. Because this is going to be a very meaningful change, and it's going to happen much faster than anything before it, I think. So I don't want any of my friends and industry compatriots getting caught flat-footed on that.
Yeah, that's great advice. So I want to turn the camera around a little bit to you and focus kind of a deep dive on what you're focused on right now. What's kind of top of mind in Jason's world and what you're working towards? Can you give us a little insight on where you're headed?
Yeah, well, so this is going to be a little bit of a broken record with the the AI stuff, but I'm working with a company now called Core, and it's an AI powered agency, basically, right? Research company almost, that has licensed some technology from a company called Supernatural, um, based in the States, and actually some old colleagues of mine who are founders of that. But what it does is basically create. Well, it's a platform that just accelerates insight, strategy, creative, right? the coolest thing about it, in my view, right? Like you take a big data set, and in our case, it's YouGov, and you can use that to define a target audience, right? And then the machine basically can sort of take that as the starting point. And like, okay, I know who you're trying to talk to. I can tell you some things about them, and now I can connect that to my broader sort of knowledge set, right? But I can use that as a filter, right? So if you're after car lovers, as an example, right, then it's going to basically just create this synthetic sort of version of your audience, and you can use it as like an always on focus group, right? So you can ask it questions, and those questions um, don't have to be just the stuff that's in the YouGov data, right?
Right.
It can say like, well, these people, this is what they look like here. Now I can kind of translate that to the broader training set, and I can piece together the rest of the picture
Right.
of who they are, and I can answer questions as them, and it's really powerful. It makes you really fast, and it's really accurate, right? Arguably more accurate than actual focus groups of
Right.
humans.
Yeah. Yeah. Humans suck. We
So,
like AI.
but it's an AI that's composed, right, of data
Yeah.
from like thousands or millions of humans,
Yeah.
instead of a focus group of 5 or 10 humans.
Right.
Um,
So who would be like an ideal client for Core's working with Core? Who would be ideal for that?
that's kind of the thing about it. It's good for anybody that needs insight about their target, that wants to get to the point of having strategy and a creative brief much more quickly and much more cheaply than doing it the old way. So it's sort of blue sky time. That's as a longtime tech nerd, right, who spent a lot of time in San Francisco and kind of went through the .com cycle, the social cycle, the mobile cycle. I love this time, right? When things are changing, when things are new, when things are evolving. So it's a super exciting element of what's happening in the world more broadly, which I think it's a really cool time to be at it.
Yeah, it's so familiar to me from like the .com era, like when that was sort of unfolding. I had this feeling of like, oh, everything's changing. I need to get on the bus. Like, but how do I get on the bus? Am I should I go into code, or should I go into like websites, or like what's the place for me in all of this? And it's always been for me video, and I'm kind of curious. Like, do you have that same feeling now of like this is a time to reinvent myself, and like how am I gonna like take who I am, my brand, my expertise, my natural talent, and put this into this new world?
Um, Kind of, but sort of similarly, right? Like so with video, right? Like that the what video was pre and post.com is a different thing, right? And what it was pre and post social, and what it was. So like I'm still doing marketing. I still want to do the same kind of thing that I have always done, but the way that I do it is going to be different.
Yeah.
That's good. That's great. It's exciting. Um, and hopefully it's better, right? And then we'll get to now, with and I think this is one of the things that one of the maybe mistakes that people make when they're thinking about AI, or when they maybe haven't thought about it for long enough, is assuming that the outputs are going to be the same, right? So we're gonna want the same kind of video, or the same kind of blog posts and websites, and all the things that we make today, and AI is just going to help us make those faster and cheaper. Well, that's true in the short term, but in the longer term, AI is going to enable all kinds of new formats and new twists on old things, right? Like, there's a lot of excitement right now around the idea of coding agents, right? And the fact that Replit just launched a co-pilot basically that can code an app for you, right? Just based on some pretty basic sort of parameters. Or like you think of like a product person, right? Like these ideas that you've had for apps that were like, well, I just don't have either the coding skills or the resources to hire developers to build this thing. Um, well, if you don't need coding skills and you can have a robot build a pretty good version of that thing, now all of a sudden you move into a world of more kind of one-to-one software.
Right.
Well, that's interesting. That's
Yeah.
different, right? That's a different kind of content.
Right.
It's a different kind of technology, and it's a different spin on marketing. So this is the stuff, the kind of stuff I've always been excited about.
Yeah.
It's just an extra exciting time right now because those things are coming kind of fast and furious.
Right. And so, as things are unfolding quickly, people need access to resources and thought leaders like yourself. If people wanted to get in touch with you and get more of the Jason Tsai experience, maybe work with Core, learn a little bit more, and you offered up some suggestions about how to use AI. How should people find you?
Find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, it's Jason Tsai. The I can't remember what the actual. I think it's Jason underscore Tsai 88 on LinkedIn, but just look for me. Just
Yeah,
JASONTSAI.
awesome. Well, Jason, thanks again for sharing all your insights and for joining us on the show. Want to wish you best of luck out there in this wild, wild west of AI.
Thank you so much, Dane. It's really been a pleasure. And I'll see you out there, man.
All right, that's a wrap.